Hello and welcome to ETPFSI. This is Ishan Shah, and today I have a very special, interesting guest with us. He's a career banker and right now on his entrepreneurial journey in the lending space, funding small businesses across India. He's Mr. Asim Dhruv. Welcome on the show, Asim sir.
Thank you, Ishan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you have been a career banker, and right now you are the co-founder and chief executive officer at Small Business Finance Company. Uh, Particularly this whole NBFC space and the overall economy has gone through a very difficult time if we see this whole pandemic scenario. Just want to understand from your experience, how do you view the current industry trends, given that the interest rates are at the bottom? While there's abundant liquidity available in the market, how are Indian small businesses and overall Indian financial ecosystem looking like?
We are in unprecedented times in terms of where we stand at the moment. Now, what happens is that one has to understand that banking is essentially a reflection of the economy. So, whatever happens in the economy across all sectors, ultimately it all plays out and washes itself into banking. And any problem that happens in the real sector also reflects in banking sooner or later in one sense or the other. If you see what's happening now, is that the real sector of the economies have taken quite a bit of a knock in terms of both the amount of shutdown that one has faced, and there are two things. One is business is affected by shutdown, and second is business is affected by COVID itself. Now, businesses affected by COVID, are going to take much longer to revive, and estimated about 8 to 10% are businesses which are affected by COVID. The rest all are affected by lockdown, which have bounced back. So one is seeing two, three trends. One is that the urban India, is facing the maximum pressure because the virus loves densities and it has attacked the bigger cities a lot more. And the smaller cities, the smaller towns, the tier two, tier three, tier four towns have actually been largely unaffected by the virus. And what one has seen is that barring the month of April, from May, activity had generally resumed. And today, the activities have come back to reasonable amounts of pre-COVID levels. So even if you see sectors which have been majorly impacted, like travel, which have restrictions all over the place by the government. Also now 70% of aircrafts are operating, 50% of pre-COVID air traffic is back. So there is a limping to normalcy that is happening. However, the impact is obviously there on the economy, and which will reflect on the banking system. But the Reserve Bank of India has given quite a bit of measures in terms of moratoriums, in terms of ECL, etc., to ensure that some amount of balm is applied on the wounds, and some amount of extra time is given for businesses to revive back. So all in all, there is stress, but the situation looked very, very gloomy in the month of April and May. There are now several rays of sunshine that one is happy to look into.
During this whole phase of May onwards, we saw the finance minister coming out with the Atmanirbhar Bharat packages, which were directed at different sectors and one specifically towards the NBFC space in terms of availing liquidity. Second, also credit guarantee for the MSME sectors as well, and another host of a lot of measures for the MSMEs to come out of this stressed environment. So how much of it has actually trickled down, and how have the MSMEs benefited? Like, what are your conversation with these small businesses? To what extent they have got, these facilities?
So what happened was that RBI realized after what happened with ILFS and the aftermath thereafter, that NBFCs die at the spigot of liquidity, and not so much in terms of handling troubled assets. So in terms of what was immediately needed was liquidity, and liquidity can keep the NBFC business model alive. So
Yes.
what was done in terms of whether it was TLTRO or it was ECG, they ensured that liquidity was available plenty, and liquidity was evenly distributed. So all liquidity did not only go to the AAA companies, which would be obvious, but they ensured through these schemes that liquidity even went down to lower rated NBFCs, which were in the triple B rated NBFCs as well. So to that extent, liquidity was provided, and therefore first thing was that the doctor was kept alive. The next step was how do we handle the patients in terms of the businesses down the line. Now there again, what was needed, because see what happened, that there are two three factors at play here. One is that people's income got affected People rents, were not coming, etc. To malls and to people who had rented out their office spaces or their shops on rent. The rents had stopped. Secondly, the entire income in terms of sales had disappeared for a lot of businesses like restaurants, theaters, etc. Thirdly, the salaries, continued. So you had the pressure of paying your rents, paying your salaries, and then you have, if you have borrowings, then you have to service interest, and pay the EMIs on the loans as well. So one is that the moratorium being provided, whether it started with moratorium one, then became moratorium two, etc. And then later on with a soft landing with restructuring, and extra liquidity of 20% in terms of an emergency line. So all these measures ensured that businesses which are in good health, salvageable, just had a little bit of a knock, get a helping hand. Because see, RBI was a little hamstrung because normally in other countries, so many monetary measures have not happened. Fiscal measures have happened by the government.
Yes.
So other countries have resorted to fiscal measures. We while the finance ministry had announced a large package, not much of that really came down to help the sector in distress. While some of the things in terms of ensuring that the GST payments, refunds all happen, ensuring that the public sector units pay off all the SMEs and small businesses, did help. But in a larger sense, unlike the cash packages that one saw in the West, we were only relying on out-of-box monetary means by the central bank. Supreme Court has also stepped in terms of ensuring that no account can be classified as an NPA in the interim. So all in all, businesses have been preserved, and what appeared to be a bloodbath in April and May, at that point of time, now appears that there will be a soft landing. There will be a fair amount of curing of these accounts that one will have to do. Credit costs are certainly going to go up from where they used to be, but the profitability of the sector is good. NBFCs and banks are, more NBFCs, than banks are well capitalized. Tier one equity is more than 15%. So there is an ability to absorb some of these bad loans, that one will end up writing off and moving on from here. So all in all, the system has been protected pretty well by the central bank.
So that's really interesting to know what the ground situation looks like right now. Moving on from industry to SBFC particularly, overall, how has this period been? Considering Morat 1, Morat 2, and then the restructuring of loans. Uh, there have been pockets where in across geography where there has been particular stress. Also, one trend we saw in between that there was a lot of demand for gold loans as well. So if you could just spell out that how has the first three quarters been for SBFC and in terms of book size, in terms of loan disbursals, and how the period has been for you?
So the see NBFCs are essentially coolies of credit. So what we do is that we take ourselves credit wholesale, and then we parcel it out in terms of retail loans all across the countryside. So the businesses we finance are essentially very small businesses. They are generational businesses in smaller towns all across the country. And these are businesses where, if you look at the total system, there are about 65 million small businesses in the country, of which only about 8 to 9% get any form of organized credit. So there is a large amount of population that has a CIBIL score, but that score comes from small personal loans that they would have borrowed. They've never really experienced commercial credit before. So to that extent, it's a virgin market. It's a first-time borrower market that we are reaching out to. Now we are a secured lender, and we lend against either property or gold to commodities that we accept. And most of the lending that we do is either secured by a residential property of the borrower, or his office space, or in terms of gold. Now there are two different trends that one saw during the pandemic. That initially, when the shutdown happened and businesses experienced a jolt, at that point of time, they needed urgent capital and urgent amount of money to survive. At that point in time, there was not a single lender who was willing to lend in those months, even when after it opened up. So lending actually did not begin well into after the lockdown opened up, and on August and September is when lending again restarted. So between those months, there was a complete lockdown. Now, what happened was gold loans became a kind of the borrowing of the last resort for a lot of small businesses who could immediately raise cash for whatever requirement they had, whether it was in terms of working capital or paying back a creditor or buying new stock, or paying salaries, so that became an emergency line of credit for a lot of borrowers. So we saw during the month of May and June, and July, the lockdown months, we saw the significant increase in gold loan demand, the kind that we hadn't seen before. So we now have a 500 crore gold loan book, which is operating across all 120 branches that we have across the country. Now, the loans against property and the larger demand completely evaporated, because we even the lenders did not even have means to evaluate. Ultimately, we have credit officers to go, and during the pandemic time, we also did not want to expose our officers to any risk. So that lending, which required credit evaluation, could not happen. So the entire loans against property, was put on hold for the up to August, and September is when we began lending. However, what happened was that the because in PNL, usually what happens is that what you are doing in the past actually gives you results in the future. So the slowdown that we are experiencing in terms of business growth will actually have an impact more on the next year's PNL than this year's PNL. So this year, in terms of profit and loss, we achieved our last full year's profitability in the first half of this financial year. So we are looking at more than doubling our profits in this financial year, as it stands. So the business has now resumed. We are back to pre-COVID levels, and beyond. We are actually doing new highs in terms of disbursal, both loans against property as well as gold loans. And we are confident that the market continues to exist. And generally, what happens is that in lending, the best lending always happens during difficult times. Most mistakes are always made during good times. So to that extent, right now, with the market situation being tough, in terms of building a lending business, probably this is the best time.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Within the same space, we have a lot of fintech lenders or digital lenders coming up, while you have adopted a sort of a phygital approach or more of a physical approach in terms of having a brick and mortar structures. Uh, just to understand, how do you view this market in that sense? Like, you have on one hand digital lenders also growing, but there is equal amount of stress in that space as well. And isn't it like a cost specific thing when it comes to brick and mortar?
So see, there are lending basically is of is of the following types. One is that you have a short-term loan and you have a longer-term loan. The second is that you have security and you have no security. So basically, in one of these and combination of these boxes is where lending happens. Now, a fintech is a good model, for short-term unsecured lenders to operate it. For longer term lenders, because there is no way you can assess a business for we lend 7, 10 or 10 years. You cannot really just look at the past digital data of the customer and based on that draw up such a large loan tenure. So you can, so if I know, for example, if I know what X person's salary is for the last 6 months, I can very safely draw that the next 6 months his salary is more or less likely to remain at that level. So I can give you a loan for 6 months. But then I'm giving you a loan for 5 years. I need to be really sure of your background, and a lot of other factors before I can draw up a conclusion of whether I should do that kind of a long tenure lending. So the fintech lending generally happens more in the unsecured space, more in the shorter end of the tenure. We are more a working capital financier for businesses, and our businesses also are not that tech savvy. So the model we have adopted for ourselves is a phygital model, where we convert the entire file of the customer. So we do not have customer does not give us any document digitally. We go to the customer's place and digitize all the documents using OCR, using downloads from various sites, and then connecting it to our ecosystem. So then the file flows digitally in our system. But ultimately, what happens is that while digital is a great way to understand a customer's ability to pay, it is not such a great way to understand customers' intention to pay. So we then ensure that a credit officer goes and meets the customer, calls on the neighbors, does reference checks, understands the business model, and sustainability. So a lot of this stuff, value gets added when the touch and feel model is adopted. So for different horses for different courses. If I was doing short tenure lending, I would prefer the physical, the fintech route, unsecured lending. But if the lending model that we have adopted, for us, the phygital route, in our opinion, suits better.
So we have budget upcoming, and there are a lot of expectations the industry has put forward too. What do you think like could be some of the measures in with the government that could give fuel to the economy or give fuel to the small businesses and to the overall NBFC space?
So see, personally, I believe that unfortunately, we should actually do away with this whole budgeting exercise. It should just be a simple P&L statement. Every year, making changes to rules, is just complicating ease of doing business. But that's just a personal opinion. That's not how we work. So we are going to get a budget, and there will be a lot of tinkering, that will happen. So what really, in my opinion, is needed now is that India has started saving a lot more and spending a lot less. So we need to now create incentives for people to spend, and we'll have to find ways to really increase consumer spending, to really revive the demands across all sectors. Because whether it is so, if the government puts a lot of investment in infrastructure, that ultimately trickles down well to all sectors of the economy. And if there are GST cuts done, just see what happened to real estate sales in Bombay after a simple stamp duty cut.
Yes.
So a stamp
Yes.
duty cut from 5% to 2% has actually taken real estate sales to an all-time high in the month of December. Almost 17,000 units got sold, which has never ever happened. So,
Yes.
so to that extent, there is money. If you are seeing the bank growth of deposits, now banks are actually giving you negative interest rates. So
Yes.
they are paying you 3 to 4% versus an inflation of 7%. So you are actually negative interest rates, and they are incentivizing you to save less and spend more. However, people are not spending when enough, because again, spending happens when you are more confident of the future, which is right now shaken up a bit. So with the vaccine coming, with the mood lifting, with the numbers of corona falling, now people are a little more comfortable stepping out of their comfort zones and getting onto business as usual. So in the budget, two things. One is a large thrust on infrastructure spend, and second is a temporary GST cut to get spending going. And the government has already come up with a some of the good other measures that have helped several industries. The PLI is an excellent scheme.
Yes.
And if reports are to be believed, Credit Suisse has calculated that the actual impact on GDP could be as high as 1.7%. So and it will save us about $55 billion in terms of imports. Or extra exports. So to that extent, I think these two things may be a big fillip for the economy. Right now, we just need a little bit of a morale boost and a reason for people to go out there and spend, because travel is not happening, etc. People are not going out, not shopping, not going to malls, not watching movies. Once people go out, then they begin to spend. Vaccination will help people go out, and a little bit of a stimulus from the government may help boost and lift.
Okay. So how does your current book size look like? And going ahead, what is the strategy you have adopted? While we definitely go by the financial year, what are your thoughts on 2021 for SBFC? More expansion, more distribution? As you said, this is the best time to go out and do lending, but just your plan for 2021 in that sense.
So in October to December, when people were still battling with the lockdown and the aftermath, we actually expanded our distribution by 25%. We were 100 branches in September. We will be 125 branches by 31st of December today, and which is a significant expansion. This expansion is coming in all the 17 states that we are present in, and we are going deeper into towns there. And we are also opening our 18th state of Bihar next month, and reaching out to about 5 new cities in Bihar at one go. So what we are seeing is that, one, an expansion of distribution. Second is that we have launched new products which are perfect for the pandemic affected world. So we have launched a product in gold called Genie, and what Genie does is basically home delivery of gold loans. So a customer can now just dial in, doesn't need to come to our branch. Customer can dial in. The valuer goes to the customer's house on a bike, and with all the COVID protection measures in terms of gloves, masks, the social distancing thereof. He has a kit by which he values gold jewelry at the customer's house, and instantly money is transferred into the customer's account, and there's a GPS chip that tracks the packet back into our vaults. So and if the customer wants his gold back, similarly he through the app or through a call center, the customer can pay off the money, and we will drop the gold back to the customer's house in 24 hours. So now that the customers may not be as comfortable stepping out of their home, we have gone a little extra in terms of offering them this service as well. So we are now taking the products deeper into the countryside, and we are finding good acceptance and to both the lending against property as well as the gold loans.
Okay. And in terms of your fundraising plans, if any, and how does that side of your business look like?
So see, at the moment we have 1,000 crores of net worth, and we have a book of about 3,500 crores. So we are comfortable in terms of where we stand in terms of leverage, in terms of funding. We have enough cash on our balance sheet in terms of liquidity, holdings, and banks have been forthcoming in terms of lending more money for growth. Equity raise, we are a private company, so the shareholders will keep raising equity as and when needed. And next year we will be doing another round of equity raise in the first quarter of next fiscal, which will allow us to further grow from there. So we clearly believe that we are at an inflection point, and we will ensure that we keep the company well funded so that the growth doesn't pause.
All right, Mr. Aseem sir. Thank you so much for those really
Thank you,
great
Shan.
insights. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, Shan. Thank you very much.